certified composition. You see it there, and as we'll see a little bit later in the lecture, there were also some artists who worked in oil or acrylic on canvas that painted in similar styles. For those who did prints, for those who worked in oil or acrylic on canvas, in addition, they also worked in the ink painting medium. So it's not that they were just taking these stylistic conventions and applying them to different media. Some of them worked in various media, and this is just to show the range of that. But it was done by Chunting Shi, a young designer in Taiwan, who joined the Fifth Moon Group in 1965, and in 1969 produced a triptych that you see here, which he entitled Centrifuging. Like other members of the group, he explored the question of whether a painting, or in this case a print, is a surface sufficient in its own right, a window into an illusion beyond, or both. This is a question that late 20th century painters in Europe and the Americas also continued to explore. His triptych represents the concern with large, block-like forms that fascinated American painters. It is a great pleasure, as always, to be in San Francisco, and a treat to be with you as well. Thank you for yet another invitation to speak, and I'm most grateful for that invitation. Now, this morning I will use PowerPoint, which I sometimes use, but this is the first time I've really used it here. For the most part, it works quite well. If I have messed things up, forgive a few glitches here and there. Now, as Noah mentioned, although I do most of my scholarly work in the field of Chinese ceramics, and to some extent in Korean painting and ceramics, I think most of you know that I actually did my graduate work in Chinese painting. I studied at the University of Kansas, Lawrence, working with Chu-Tsing Lee and Lawrence Sigmund, specializing in the painting of the Song, Yuan, and early Ming periods, and assuming that I would follow my mentor, Chu-Tsing Lee, and become a professor of Chinese painting. The 2 years at the National Palace Museum, Taipei, working as a curatorial assistant and translator, and then 3 years at Harvard's Faubert Museum, working as an assistant curator of Asian art, convinced me that I was better suited for curatorial work than for full-time teaching. As, despite my love of lecturing and teaching, I have an even stronger love for day-to-day work with actual works of art. Then, curatorial association with museum collections strong in three-dimensional objects, but relatively weak in two-dimensional works, led me away from research on Chinese painting to work on ceramics and other three-dimensional objects. Now, over the past decade and a half, however, my own work at Harvard has led me back to the field of Chinese painting. If not to the classical works that I studied in school, then to modern and contemporary works in a distinctly related style. I made a decision already in 1993 that our museum should begin to collect works of modern and contemporary Chinese ink paintings. In the spring semester of 1974, I had a course with Professor Lee on Chinese painting of the 19th and 20th centuries, so I had a little background in the field. Thanks to that course, my interest had been sparked, so that I have been paying some attention to exhibitions of such materials since the 1970s. But it was the realization in 1993 that my curatorial predecessors at Harvard had not added any modern or contemporary works to the Asian collection during the more than 100 years since our museum's founding. That not only struck me as odd, but just wrong. As I thought through the issue, I concluded that it would be ridiculous if I, in turn, were to abdicate responsibility for collecting modern and contemporary works, thus leaving my successors with an even greater chronological gap in the museum collection. Thus, little by little, I began to add such works early spring from 1966, which you see here. Since then, we have acquired a few paintings each year, so that we now have more than 40 works, the most recent addition being Yu Peng's Wild Winds Through Lofty Mountains, which dates to 2007. For me, the most important painting that we have acquired thus far is Liu Dan's Ink Landscape from 1991, which is a huge painting. The image that you see here, the actual painting, is about 8 feet tall, and with its mounting, it's nearly 12 feet tall. And if I think this is the most important painting that we've acquired thus far, a close second would be Li Huayi's Mount Huang, which dates to 2004, and which we acquired within just a month or so of getting to Liu Dan. Now, if my decision to collect modern and contemporary Chinese works, though not exclusively, of course, was one factor that led me back to the field of Chinese painting, the second and more recent factor was the chance to organize a tradition redefined, modern and contemporary Chinese ink paintings from the collection of Chuxing Li, which was jointly organized by our Harvard Art Museum and the Phoenix Art Museum, and which premiered at Harvard last fall. The show has just closed at the Phoenix Art Museum. It will be featured at the Norton Museum of Art in West Palm Beach, Florida this fall, and then will go on to the University of Kansas' Spencer Museum of Art next spring. Today's talk owes a great deal to my work on A Tradition Redefined, though it also owes a debt to my own curatorial collecting activities and certainly to my graduate education long ago.